The title of my presentation is Decolonizing the Mind and Epistemic Justice, Reparation Beyond the Economic Frame. That's the presentation outline. Understanding, that's part one, understanding epistemic injustice, which is the destruction of knowledge systems and the false ranking of truths. And part two, we have the process of decolonization. And we are going to examine what true epistemological justice demands. In part three, we shall be looking at defining real reparations, reclaiming intellectual control, curriculum reform, and institutional accountability. Next. By way of introduction, I want to state that we are here to discuss a history that goes deeper than land or gold. For a very long time, the outside world constructed Africa as a mere object to be studied, rather than an equal partner with its own valuable insights. From Hegel to the colonial school, the goal was not just economic control, but the systematic dismantling of African history and identity. Today, we must ask, how do we fix a structure that was intentionally built to keep Africa and other formerly colonized nations disconnected from who they really are? My main point today is that true reparation goes beyond paying debts or offering apologies or giving back the artworks that were removed from Africa. True reparation requires us to rethink how we value knowledge. We must move toward epistemic pluralism, a more inclusive approach that makes room for all perspectives rather than just the voices that have always held power. I am calling for not just a fundamental paradigm shift, but also a paradigm expansion. This next. To explore this, my presentation is organized into three parts. In part one, I will outline what epistemic injustice looks like and how power and knowledge have been used to dominate, suppress, and destroy indigenous knowledge systems, and how certain truths have been falsely ranked above others. Part two explores the process of decolonizing the mind and what epistemological justice really demands. And in part three, I will discuss what real reparations look like. This includes taking back control of Africa's own intellectual life, updating school curriculum, and auditing major institutions for bias. This part also embodies my conclusion. The next. What is epistemic or cognitive injustice? Epistemic injustice happens when powerful systems refuse to acknowledge the many different ways people around the world understand their lives and find meaning in the world. This is a specific type of harm done to people by dismissing them as thinkers. Now, I will only mention Frantz Fanon here, and he said that colonialism is a totalizing force that goes beyond occupying land to occupying the mind. It plants seeds of self-doubt and isolation in the people it rules, builds a mental cage, convincing the colonized that their languages are inferior, their spiritual beliefs are backward, and their histories do not exist. Now, this issue of language, it's just recently that it began to dawn on me. When I was in secondary school, class 2, they made a rule that nobody should speak their mother tongue, vernacular, in the school. One fine day that I was with my friend and we were chatting in my mother tongue. And the senior came and said, punished us and said we should kneel down for speaking our mother tongue. This destruction of, native language starts from there. I didn't understand what it all meant at that time, but this, when I started reading about decolonizing the mind, that the meaning began to dawn on me. Now let's go to the next one. The next slide. The next slide. Now, what does decolonizing the mind actually mean? I had to bring in the issue of epistemic injustice because I wanted it to be the background. Because when you're talking about epistemic justice, it's a response to epistemic injustice. So I needed to articulate what epistemic injustice means, but that's really not my focus. My focus is how you can achieve epistemic justice and also achieve reparations beyond economic threat. And that's where my emphasis is going to lie. Now, what does decolonizing the mind actually mean? This process is about recognizing, protecting, and reviving the cultural identities, languages, and ways of life that were suppressed or ignored during the colonial era. It involves two main efforts. One must actively identify and dismantle the lasting influence of colonial ideas that still shape how one sees the world. This means questioning the Eurocentric narratives that have dominated our schools, laws, and culture for so long. B, one must restore the value of indigenous knowledge and local wisdom. It's about remembering what colonialism tried to erase, restoring a sense of wholesomeness by embracing local languages and traditions, which are the primary vessels for how different cultures understand the reality. We've read about Mujimbi, who was talking about colonial library. Where you have the narratives, all the beliefs, that people imbibe about themselves and their realities. So decolonization or decolonizing the mind has to do with dismantling that colonial library. Okay. Now, this process is about, decolonizing the mind is not about trying to squeeze non-Western ideas into Western boxes. Nor is it about simply replacing one truth with another. That's not the essence of decolonizing the mind. You remove one dominant view with another dominant view. That's what I was talking about, paradigm shift and paradigm expansion. Okay. Now, it involves a pluralistic view. One needs to move toward a world where one accepts that knowledge is inherently diverse. No single culture should have a monopoly on what counts as real or truthful information. B, cognitive freedom. One must liberate one's mind from the idea that Western system has the only way to think critically. This allows for the birth of new ways of reasoning and new ways of being human. C, action for equality. This demands that one treats diverse viewpoints as equally legitimate, ensuring that everyone's way of understanding the world is respected and included in the global conversation. That's why decolonizing the mind, that's what it involves. Please, the next slide. Now, it also involves moving toward pluriversality. That's a word of many truths. And the conviction is pluriversality is a word where many words fit. Okay? Many different perspectives exist side by side. Pluriversality rejects the belief that there's only one true reality that must be approved by Western standards. Instead, it recognizes that knowledge is shaped by where, how, and why we live. In this approach, different systems of knowledge are respected for what they are. They do not need to be converted into Western terms to be considered legitimate or slang. Next slide. Now, what is epistemological justice? Now, epistemological justice is the active commitment to respecting and including the diverse ways of knowing as equals. The core idea is that every culture has its own traditions of knowledge that are just as valid as any other. And true fairness means creating a space where these different perspectives can talk to one another without being forced to change their own standards or translate themselves into Western terms to be taken seriously. Epistemic justice aims to dismantle the hierarchy that position Western systems as the only neutral, universal standard of truth by acknowledging that all knowledge comes from a specific context. And it calls for democratizing who gets to create knowledge, ensuring that the power to interpret our world is shared fairly across all cultures. Please, next slide. There are three pillars to be considered in epistemological justice. One is recognition. One must stop trying to prove that African philosophy or other non-Western knowledge is legitimate by using Western yardsticks. Instead, one must treat them as what they are, independent, rigorous and sophisticated ways of exploring ethics, logic, and existence. Number 2 is redistribution. We're talking about sharing resources. Now, the current system stays in place through university grants, prestigious journals, and massive library archives. Real justice requires shifting these resources, that is, investing in indigenous research centers, digitizing non-Western archives, and ending the habit of looking only to Northern universities for the final word or truth. Then representation, taking the lead. People from the global south must move beyond being the subjects of research or the ones just reacting to Western questions. They need to be architects. Okay? Now, this means African thinkers and scholars from marginalized traditions should be the ones setting the research agendas, deciding what problems are worth solving, and defining what universal human concerns actually are. These are some of the demands of epistemic justice and the pillars of epistemic justice. Now, let's look at turning theory into real change, putting epistemological justice into practice. It's not just about theory. It's not just talk. You just talk. So it goes beyond the thought about fairness. So it demands a complete overhaul of one's daily academic habits. One needs to change how one structures one's classrooms. Most of us are teachers and we're lecturers. How one conducts research and even the languages one uses to think. Okay? And I want to outline some of the things that are needed, that we need to do if we have to achieve epistemological justice in practice. One is rebuilding the classroom and making the curriculum truly global. And what does that mean? In a truly decolonized university, African philosophy is a main part of the curriculum, not a special topic, say for the end of the semester. Thus, to practice true justice, one must integrate African concepts into the core foundations of education, such as the African perspective on the human spirit and personality alongside standard Western ideas of the mind. I want to mention here, at least the younger generation are not as unfortunate as some of us were. When I went to the university, there was nothing like African philosophy. It was all Western philosophy from start to finish. It was when I went to do my master's at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, that I encountered African philosophy for the first time. So we're talking about decolonizing and doing something about the class. Today, it has changed. So many universities, both federal and state universities, have incorporated African philosophy as part of their philosophy curriculum. And in fact, the National University Commission insists, that it must be part of it. So we are going somewhere. Okay? Now, another thing that needs to be done is to put African thinkers like Mbembe, Oluwole, and Jonathan Chimakana on the same level as Western ones like Foucault or Kant. To stop pretending that Western logic is the only way to be rational. We should build a pluriversal space where different ways of understanding the world, not just the European one, are respected as equals. Please, next slide. Respecting linguistic sovereignty and breaking the language barrier. Institutions must invest in native languages by taking concrete steps to support work done in native African languages, such as Igbo, Yoruba, Amharic, or Kiswahili. I'm happy with what is happening at the center. This is really an epoch-making, phenomenon. That a center is devoted to looking at philosophy from different languages. I want to congratulate the team that is making this thing happen. Congratulations. Now, we continue. Providing the self-recognition and financial support for research and dissertation written in local languages that we currently give to those written in European ones. Rewarding scholars who specialize in indigenous philosophical terms and frameworks. This will encourage them. Okay? Once you start rewarding people, you see more people will go into it. Okay? Now, you have investing in journals that allow academic debates to happen in multiple languages and breaking the monopoly of monolingual global publishers. This means following the path of scholars like Kwesi Wiredu, who argued that we must decolonize our concepts, working through complex problems in one's own mother tongues to ensure one is thinking for oneself, rather than just repeating foreign ideas that do not always fit one's reality. Now let's go to the next slide. Reclaiming our intellectual independence. So we have to also rewriting the rules of publishing. To achieve justice, we must build our own publishing houses and citation systems. We need our own networks to review, share, and honor African thought. We should no longer rely on the West to tell us which of our ideas are valid. This is a very serious problem, even right now in Nigerian universities. I joined the system when, if you published anything anywhere, it was accepted for promotion. From there, they migrated and said, no, it will no longer be only Nigeria. Just try and publish anywhere outside, even if it's Cameroon. Even in any West African country, no problem. We published. Thereafter, they came back again and said, no, the publication must have some geographical spread. America, Europe, Asia. So you must have your publications planted in those places and all that. We didn't complain. Everybody started struggling to do that. And people were getting to know. After that, they said, no, that one is not good enough. It must appear in Google Scholar. Okay? And that one, people were struggling. Now, Google will give you citation count. How many and all that and all that. Before you could say Jack Robinson, they came up with another one. It must either be in Scopus or Web of Science. In fact, they rejected Schemago. And to tell you, to publish in Scopus, some Scopus-based journals charge as much as 800,000 naira. Divide 800,000 naira by 1,400 naira. It will give you an idea in euros what we're talking about. Yeah. And you must have a particular number of it for you to qualify to become a professor. To move to the rank of associate professor, you need a certain number. Right. And to move to the rank of full professor, you need a certain number. So you find a scenario where, in fact, during promotion exercise, where all the professors gather, they will bring the webmaster. The webmaster will come and display the projector like this. In the article, you say Google Scholar on Scopus, they will start tracing it. Trace the journal, trace when it was published, trace the number of counts, and so on and so forth. So you see academics struggling to publish in these places while ignoring the local needs, because you must publish according to the standard. It is he who pays the piper that dictates the truth. So that is what we are going to. That's why right now, when somebody is announced a professor, come and see the celebration. It's like somebody who survived the plane crash. Okay? I know. I attended the one. I am not exaggerating. The hall where the event took place cost over 1 million naira. That's just the hiring of the hall. Then come and look at the decoration of the hall itself. That one, by my own estimate, I'm not an interior decorator, but what I saw there wouldn't have cost less than 1.5 million. That one was beside. Then the suit that the invitees ate. That hall was packed in. Over 500 people were in attendance to celebrate the professorship of somebody. It's like somebody has landed. Just because. So that's what, academics are going through. Okay. Now, taking control of research funding. True independence requires African nations to fund their own research. They must create national budgets that support the full range of African philosophical inquiry without needing outside approval. Next slide. Now, what is the internal duty of African philosophers? We must hold ourselves accountable. One is changing our focus. Who are we talking to? Okay? Now, philosophers have a duty to write for their own communities first. Real insight happens when we stop treating local experts, such as traditional healers as mere subjects to be studied and start treating them as intellectual partners who possess their own sharp analytical minds. That's what Halley and Sodipo were discussing in their book. Now, philosophers must use open access platforms and local networks to get their ideas out of expensive, exclusive academic journals and into the hands of the people. Okay? So philosophers must avoid scholasticism, writing only for other professors about abstract ideas that do not matter to everyday life. Instead, philosophers should use philosophy to solve real-world problems pertaining to politics, environment, and technology. Because this issue of publishing in Scopus, Web of Science, takes philosophers or lecturers, academics away from the local issues. Because some of those papers, when you will say, no, we can't publish this. I think you should look for a journal in your country to publish it. And yet the journal in your country, the university will not accept because it's not Scopus based. Yeah. Now we go to the next slide. Please. Protecting our intellectual future. African philosophers must have the responsibility to act as mentors, protecting the next generation from the pressure to adopt Western ways of thinking. We have a role, those of us who are getting old and about to retire, we have a role to prepare the next generation. Now, mentors must help young students perform complex philosophical work in their own languages like Igbo, Yoruba, Swahili, Amharic, or Wolof. By maintaining this humble dialogue with the older generation and the students of the future, philosophers ensure that the next generation has the tools to speak for themselves and lead the way. Next slide. Now, I want to look at reparation. And the point here is that money is not enough. I want to first of all look at the trap of wealth without wisdom. If former colonies recover their material wealth and their minds are still locked into colonial ways of thinking, they have not truly been liberated. If an African nation uses its new wealth to build universities that still treat European ideas as the only real knowledge and treats its own traditions as simple folklore, then that nation is just working to keep its own mind in a cage. As long as our courts, farms, and hospitals prioritize Western methods while ignoring our own ancestral wisdom, our society might be financially comfortable but remain intellectually enslaved. You come to medicine, they will say, traditional medicine sellers or whatever. But some traditional herbs, they cure. But they will tell you, no. There is how many, there is no measurement. It doesn't tell you how many and how many times you're going to take it, but it's working for the people. So everybody is directed to modern hospital, and some of those modern hospitals are even not efficient enough because of the demand. Now let's go to the next slide. Controlling the mental universe. The power to control a society depends on controlling its mental universe. That is how people view themselves, their history, and their future. If a society does not reclaim its intellectual independence, it remains dependent on its former colonizers to tell it what is true, what is ethical, and what is valuable. As Frantz Fanon and Ngũgĩ or Thiong'o have said, if we only heal the economy, but ignore the damage done to our thinking and our culture, we have not actually ended colonialism. We have just changed the way it operates. True repair must be total, for without it, material wealth is just a stopgap measure. True liberation requires that former colonies repair their finances and their minds, ensuring that they are no longer looking to the West for permission to define their own reality. Only then can they move from being compensated to being truly free. Please, the next slide. Reparation as epistemic restoration. While financial reparations focus on balancing budgets and paying back stolen wealth, epistemic restoration is reclaiming one's human right to think for oneself. For the African continent, it's about rebuilding the systems our schools, our languages, and our institutions so that African thought can grow on its own terms. Africa needs to create environments where its philosophies are free to ask their own questions and thrive in their own languages. Today, far too much of Africa's philosophical writing, oral recordings, and sacred history is locked away in foreign vaults, kept in places like London, Paris, Berlin, and private American universities. Reclaiming Africa's books, records, and oral testimonies is a fundamental part of restoring our right to our own intellectual identity. Now, demanding the return of one's intellectual heritage means insisting that the vast collections of oral histories, epics, and music recorded by colonial researchers that are locked away in the digital fortresses in the West be brought back to African soil, managed by African institutions and made available to African people. Restoring one's knowledge in this regard means one should be able to study one's own history directly without needing a foreign gatekeeper to interpret it for one. Next slide. Taking the fight to the global stage. Policymakers and organizations like the African Union need to move beyond just celebrating culture as a form of tourism or folklore. They should make cognitive reparations a core part of their legal strategy when talking to former colonial powers. The United Nations and other international bodies need to broaden the definition of reparations. It's not just about money or climate funds. International law must recognize that the destruction and suppression of indigenous ways of knowing is a major human rights violation that harms democracy across the entire world. The next slide. I want to conclude. My conclusion is, I want us to take our minds back to where we started. For a long time, colonial thinkers considered Africa as a place without history or risk, a blank slate waiting for Western ideas to fill it. That belief system was used to destroy Africa's heritage, erase its memories, and silence its own roots. It's important to make it clear once more that true justice cannot be measured in money. Well, no payment from a Western capital can compensate Africa or any other once colonized nation in the global South for the loss of their intellectual soul. If these nations get their lands back or lose native languages, they are still under occupation. If they fix their economies but continue to use Western standards to judge their own worth, they have simply found a new way to remain captive. Well, has it ended? Yeah, another.
Yeah, this one.
One's ultimate goal is epistemological justice, the right to define one's own reality. This means, one, universities must welcome our local languages and perspectives. Two, publishers must stop acting like gatekeepers of global knowledge. C, policymakers must treat Africa's intellectual heritage as the foundation of its independence and not just a side note for tourists. And then, the foregoing requires daily action, from the professor updating a curriculum, to the researcher writing in their mother tongue, to the leader fighting for intellectual property. Everyone has a role to play in bringing about this change. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Prof, for this wonderful and very electrifying lecture. I did not want it to end. I was slowly trying to say, I hope we have more slides. I hope we have more slides. It was truly amazing. Thank you very much. So we are now approaching closer to the general discussion. So I think we can perhaps start taking questions. Please, Prof.
Okay.
Thank you. We were discussing a very difficult issue of reparation, recognizing slavery as the gravest crime against humanity and so on. So that are ethical and meta-ethical issues, very, very complicated. Because the question I have to ask is, who is the duty bearer if we consider that there is a right to reparation? Who is the duty bearer when we know that during the process, many countries refuse to acknowledge, to recognize this resolution? Then who is the duty bearer if we are waiting for some engagement from people who exercise this? So it is just to reflect aloud with you. But I have the question for Dorothy concerning the use of the word. That word came at least 5 times in your presentation. At least the word reclamation. To reclaim, to reclaim, to reclaim. So if our purpose, our aim is to exercise our identity, our freedom, our agentivity, why do we need to always reclaim? Is it not better just to exercise our freedom, not being in the process of reclaiming something? Because once again, when you reclaim that, it is you are waiting for someone to listen to you and to give you what you are asking to that person. So why not just do what you think you are able to do?
Reclaiming does not always mean that you are waiting for somebody to give you what belongs to you. For example, if Prof collected this glass case from me without my permission, and I go and collect it back, I have reclaimed it.
No, you take it.
Whether it's taken or it's the same action that has taken place. I have reclaimed it because you took it from me without permission. Okay? You can also reclaim by asserting and, making noise about what you have lost. Like all those manuscripts we talk about, they mentioned Timbuktu manuscripts, that the writer went ahead to break the colonial myth of the orality myth that Africans did not have any writing before the arrival of the Europeans. But those manuscripts contained writings about astronomy, mathematics, and native languages, and some of those manuscripts are not in the custody of Africans. So that's part of the restoration, epistemological restoration. The demand is that those things should be returned and let Africans be the ones that will custody the material. Instead of, if you want to access, you have to go and ask for permission. If possible, you may even go and ask for visa for you to be able to travel, to go to wherever it is custodied to have access to it. So I don't think there is anything wrong with the reclamation or taking it or whatever. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Prof. And Nambes, please ask him a question.
Good afternoon. Congratulations to all presenters. I want to I'm so happy today to see my master's and my PhD supervisor, Professor Dorothy Jacobs. She's a very powerful woman when it comes to academia. Prof, I'm greeting.
Yeah.
Prof, if you can remember very well, I did my master's degree at University of Nigeria Nsukka under Professor Egbe Kaja, and I presented on my master's thesis a comparative study of Anang and Bantu anthologies with reference to Placid Temple's concept of vital force.
I remember him.
I remember that day, the hall was shaking when I said that Africa can only develop when witchcraft stopped landing on people's zinc and start landing at the airport. Yes. And yes, and then you responded by saying you are indeed the great vital force. Then, after my presentation, it went viral, and I even published the master's thesis. Currently, in my state or in my town, I am tagged as a witch, and my people, cousins and relations are like, why did you go to university and study something that has to do with vital force to the point of reaching a PhD level? And they don't even understand the subject at hand. But because of this damage done by colonialism, Prof, that's by the way. My question is, who are the key actors responsible for implementing the decolonization agenda? Because African leaders, most of them are not even interested in what we are discussing.
Okay. Thank you, Kanga. I now remember you vividly. When you're talking about the people who are going to implement the decolonization, you and I are part of it. I had mentioned something about policymakers. The politicians are only interested in the money.
Yeah.
The more money, the better. If it's some other place, the money may be used to develop the country, but they will be happy to have the reparation back so that they can share it amongst themselves. So let's leave them out of it. But the decolonization process begins with you and I as lecturers in our classrooms. When we're developing a new curriculum for political philosophy or African philosophy or whatever, we should have that in mind. So we are the ones that should be in the forefront of the decolonization process.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Prof.
I want to thank Professor Dorothy. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I've learned a lot from your lecture. And you have touched an area that I'm interested in, the area of, decolonizing our mind, the loss of identity through the loss of our languages as Africans. Ma'am, thank you. Thank God you are from Nigeria. What do you think we can do about it? Just recently, I know you are aware that in Nigeria as a country, the minister just decided one day, came up and said, we should no longer teach pupils in the primary school again with the mother tongue. What do you think we can do? Can we go far? Because there are times when we are blaming European about this. We Africans, we need to sit down like we have said. We are the one that's going to write our history. So what are the ways we can do to curb all these self-inflicted problems that we have as Africans? Because we all know that when a language is lost, the culture will be lost. And the people, they are gradually leaving. So what do you think we can do about it, ma? And, it's something that really saddens my heart as an individual. Is there a way out?
So my response is that when you have leaders who are not supposed to be leaders, that is a problem. You have square pegs in round holes. You remember that the issue of teaching our mother tongues in schools, was also supported by one minister, and we started. Now, another minister has come to say, no, it is no longer necessary. That is how it has always been. In countries where you have people who are not supposed to be leaders, just because they belong to one political party or another, they are given political appointment and they make decisions that affect every other person. As I said before, decolonization or epistemic justice Universities have a role to play, schools have a role to play, because even this issue of epistemic injustice started from the schools with the colonial form of education, where the children were now told that, look, this one is not good, this one is not good, it's only this one that is good. So anything that we are going to do, it will have to start from our educational system, irrespective of who is the education minister. After a while, he will leave. Okay? That's my response to it.